Hi, hello, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Jenny and I'm a Canadian knitter living in the beautiful northeast of England, and today I thought we would talk about some 2026 knitting plans. Some very belated 2026 knitting plans. I am filming this in no, it's not even early February, we're mid-February. I'm checking the date, it's mid-February. By the time I upload this, it will probably be late February, but I wanted to upload this anyways because I have been thinking a lot about my stash and what I might do with it and what my relationship is with it. And I'm always really interested in hearing people talk about pairing yarns and yarn properties and colors and things like that with specific patterns. So I thought that that's what we would do really, is kind of talk about knitting plans in a stash guided way, in a yarn guided way. In lots of cases, a pattern that I've bought a yarn for, I've bought a yarn intending to knit a specific pattern, and over time I've shifted and I'm not so excited about that specific pattern anymore, or something about the combination of the yarn in that pattern isn't making me excited anymore. So I thought I would talk through some of that reasoning with you. First, I want to give you, to break down how we're going to go forward, I thought that I would talk to you a little bit just about context. I may have uploaded a video a week ago, kind of a knit and chat, talking about my relationship with my stash in a bit more detail, but in case you haven't seen that video, or in case I've decided not to upload it, I can't really decide if it was an overshare, kind of a bit too emotionally driven. So we'll see if I've uploaded that or not, but I thought I would give you a kind of very small summary of that. Very, very small, hopefully I'll be succinct. Then I'll move on to talking about the yarn and the patterns that I may have bought it thinking of, or the pattern that I'm thinking of now, if those are different. I'll talk about both. And then just to finish things off, and we'll see how long this gets, so maybe I'll include this at the end here, or maybe I'll include it in a future video, we'll see. You'll have seen, clicking on the video, how long this is already. I don't want to keep you too long, I don't want to tire myself out, so we'll see how we go, but a kind of final section is patterns that I want to knit in the foreseeable future that I don't have yarn for yet, because I'm certainly not tying myself to only knitting from stash this year, especially because lots of my stash is right now kind of oddly at a slightly bigger gauge, and the patterns that I'm thinking of are in general a little bit more basic. So I want to also introduce some pieces that are going to challenge me and really keep me engaged. So I'll show you kind of 4/5 patterns that I'm thinking of in that respect. Okay, so if this is your first video with me, I'm tired of talking about my health. Are those of you who've been with me before tired of hearing about my health? But it really is, it is shaping everything in my life and will continue to shape everything in my life for the foreseeable future. So unfortunately, I think for context, I do need to talk about it a little bit. I have had I have a kind of central genetic condition and a number of comorbidities that I have had my whole life, but was not aware I had my whole life, because none of us know what it's like to be in different bodies. I thought that my experience of my body was normal, and it's really not. But it became quite clear that my experience of being in my body was not normal several years ago now, and things were kind of getting steadily worse, and peaked last year. I had a big crash and spent more or less 10 or 11 months fully bedbound. I am still more or less bedbound, but as you can see, I am sitting up right now. I'm wearing not pajama clothes. I am in a different room. I'm not in my bedroom, which I've said before, I think always puts me in a really good mood. I get a real boost from being in a different space. So I'm doing a little bit better. But the most relevant part of this, I guess, is that I was unable to knit for quite a long time. I will have uploaded a video talking about everything I knit last year, and in that video I have talked about how I actually knit more last year than I thought I did. And in the context of where I am with my health and my body right now, that was actually quite a positive realization. I try not to place a value judgment for myself on amount of knitting. I always want to be able to be knitting. I want to always have enough yarn that I can knit whenever I want to, as a comfort, as, you know, just a hobby that is so important to me. But I try not to place a value on number of finished objects or anything like that. But in the last year, finishing more objects than I had previously believed was really positive, just in showing me that I was a bit more of a person in the last year than I was giving myself credit for, I guess. But it didn't feel like a lot of knitting because I had so much time. You know, wasn't working, wasn't going for walks, wasn't seeing anyone in real life. You know, I was very breathless, very worn out, not really able even to video call friends and family as much as I wanted, so I had so much time. And in that context, I really didn't do very much knitting last year at all. Not nearly as much knitting as I wished I could have been doing at the time, if that makes sense. So that's the kind of context for my life. But the relevance of this to my stash is that initially, when I stopped being able to knit and was really crashed, that has happened to me all the time. Since childhood, really. And I knew that was unusual, the migraines and stuff, but I didn't realize that it was quite as systemic as it is. And that has happened to me loads before, and I thought it would last 2 or 3 weeks, the way that it usually does. And so initially I thought that I was going to be knitting again at speed really quickly, and I replaced actual knitting with project planning and yarn buying. And I want to be clear that I'm not putting a value judgment on stash or amount of stash or anything like that. I think maybe sometimes we focus on this a little bit too much in the knitting community. I focus on it too much for myself. And planning my knits, that was really fun. But it wasn't as much fun, and it wasn't as satisfying, and it wasn't as positive for my mental health as actual knitting. And as the yarn arrived and started to pile up, and it became clear that I wasn't going to bounce back and start knitting again quickly because I was completely unable to knit. I didn't knit a single stitch between, I guess, mid-February and mid-July. And I started to be afraid that I would never be able to knit again, and that all this yarn that I had bought and loved so much and was so excited to use was just going to sit here taunting me and making me feel guilty about, capitalism and consumerism until I eventually gave it away or donated it or something like that, which would have been so sad because I was really excited to use it and I wanted so badly to be knitting. So that's the context for where we're coming from. I did spend a bit more time on that than I wanted to, but I think it's important to give this context because my knitting for the foreseeable future is really going to be shaped by where I am in my body, where I am in my mental health, where I am in, my health is doing a little bit better, but my experience of that is definitely non-linear. I will almost certainly crash at points again. I have no idea how long those will last. And so just for my own well-being, to kind of prevent myself from having those kinds of feelings next time I crash, to make life a bit easier on myself, to be a bit kinder to myself, I am going to try to work through certainly as many of my sweater quantities of yarn this year as I can. But I want to be very clear that that's a me thing. That's a me thing where I am this year. So that's where I'm coming from. I will stop rambling at you about this and let's get into the yarns and the patterns. So the first yarn that I want to talk to you about today is this gorgeous Blacker Yarns Tour. And this is yarn that I bought from someone else's D-stash last year. And I was so excited because I've wanted to try something from Blacker Yarns for quite a while. I've never used any of their yarns before, and they tend to be a bit outside my budget for yarn buying, what I'm comfortable spending on my hobby. And this when I saw this, I was just so excited because it's a gorgeous yarn. So this is worsted weight, and I'll show you a button band. It is unfortunately discontinued, this yarn, but there's no but actually. It is unfortunately discontinued, so I was really, really pleased to get some of it. I have 6 hanks, so plenty for a sweater and then maybe something else in addition. And I bought this initially thinking that I would knit the Baleen sweater by Soft Sweater, by Graf from Soft Sweater. And I was so excited, in fact, that I bought the pattern as soon as I bought the yarn, which is unlike me. I don't usually buy a pattern until I'm actually ready to cast on, and there is good reason for that, and I should have done that in this case as well, though I'm very happy to have bought the you know, it's a gorgeous sweater. Hopefully I will make it at some point with something else. But the yarn arrived and I changed my mind about knitting the Baleen, and there are a few reasons I changed my mind about knitting the Baleen. One, or many of the reasons, just have to do with buying yarn online, right? It's such a different experience to buy yarn online than it is to buy it in person, and this is a woolen spun, not overly rustic. I quite like a rustic yarn. This one's not overly rustic, but it is woolen spun. It is, you know, warm. It is a little bit scratchy, and the Baleen is a lace sweater knit from one sleeve across the body to the other sleeve. And because it's lace, it's meant to be quite tight on the arms. And in all of the sample photos, the models are wearing it with bare arms. And I realized that I didn't want this on my bare arms. I like a rustic yarn. I'm always talking, I'm so happy with rustic yarn, but I'm wearing a long sleeve t-shirt or a kind of merino base layer under everything all the time, really just because I'm a coldie. But I realized that this isn't necessarily something I would want next to that much skin. I was also realizing I love this color. This is such a beautiful color. It's got this heathering because there's alpaca and a number of different sheep breeds in here. I don't think it has it on the ball band. Maybe I'll pull that up actually. Bear with me. Okay, I've got it. So, Tor contains 55% Romney cross from the south of Devon and 28% of the softest merino cross from the north. We added just 5% of North Ronaldsay, I love North Ronaldsay, and 4% Shetland to enhance the woolly character, and 8% British alpaca to contribute color and softness. So it's got this great mix of fibers from different sheep and from alpaca, and I think the alpaca is, right, they said that the alpaca is where the color is coming from, so it must be a gray alpaca. I don't know if you'll be able to see, but there's this gorgeous heathering. So I love this color, but it's not the best color for me. I was aware of this when I bought it, right? This is one of the consequences of buying from D-Stash. You can find yarns sometimes that you're really excited about, but you don't have the color selection that you would have if you were buying them new. And this color, I think, just washes me out of it. Now, I bought it anyways. I don't really care that it washes me out. That's the problem of whoever's looking at me. And I don't think whoever's looking at me cares about my appearance as much as I do. So if I don't care, I just don't think it matters. But I was realizing that maybe this color, much as I'm very happy to have a sweater in it, maybe this isn't a sweater that I would want to be against my bare skin. Maybe that, maybe it just wasn't, tickling my excitement anymore. So I decided pretty quickly that this was not going to work for the Baleen. I'll have to find something else for the Baleen in the future. But to show you what I want to knit this into instead, I'm going to pull up another yarn. And that is this Estelle Eco Shetland worsted. This is a Canadian yarn, another worsted weight. Though I would call this a thick DK, I think it's a fairly fine worsted. And about 2 years ago, I started knitting this into the Caledonia by Sylvia Watts Cherry. And I was so excited about it, and then I made that silly mistake that we make sometimes as knitters where I forgot to change my needle size when I went from the ribbing to the body of the sweater. The Caledonia is knitted in pieces from the bottom up. And I was just frustrated with myself. I put it away, and then every once in a while I would kind of say to myself, I should go back to the Caledonia. And I wasn't as excited about it anymore. And it took me a long time to put my finger on it, but I think that I just wasn't as excited about the combination of that pattern and this yarn anymore. I love this yarn, I love that pattern, but I don't know, the two together, it just wasn't making me excited anymore. Whereas this, I think would look gorgeous in the Caledonia. So that's my new plan for this Blacker Yarns tour. I'm going to knit up the Caledonia. I have actually already cast that on. I'm not very far in, but I'm really excited about it, and I think that will work great. Now, that leaves me with a sweater's quantity of the Eco Shetland worsted to figure out. And one of my goals, I guess, for this year is to knit myself more cardigans. I have never really been a big cardigan wearer, I think just because I've always been such a coldie that I was never opening a cardigan if I wore it, so why bother? Like, I might as well just, when I was not knitting my own sweaters, I only ever purchased, pullover sweaters, regular jumpers, non-cardigan. I'm trying to find a word for non-cardigan jumper, but anyways, you know what I mean. And I'm still very much a coldie, but my temperature regulation in general is worse than it used to be, and I basically survive on tea, hot tea, and now it varies with good days and bad days, but on a bad day, if I drink a cup of tea, I am just so hot for like 2.5 minutes, and then it goes away really quickly, and I go back to being really cold, often colder than before because I've sweat a little bit. But it's become really clear that, especially on bad days, it would be really handy to have more cardigans. So actually I'm planning to knit a lot of cardigans this year. And I thought this would be a great yarn for a cardigan. I have been planning to knit the Bonnie cardigan by Orlensuch. And I will definitely be knitting that this year because I have bought, in addition to what I'm going to show you today, I did buy some Canadian yarn, which I sent to my parents' house in Montreal to save on shipping a little bit, and they will very kindly be bringing that to me when they come for a visit in a couple of months' time. So I'm definitely going to be knitting the Bonnie cardigan, and though I would want to knit this at a different gauge than the Bonnie is 16 or 17 stitches per 10 centimeters or 4 inches, whereas this I would want to knit at more of a 20 stitch gauge. So really this would work better for the Albini, but you've seen me do this before, I'm quite comfortable with adjusting the gauge in patterns. I'm not too worried about that. So that has been my plan. This morning though, this morning it occurred to me that I also have this black yarn, which is a woolly knit cone in the color jet black. So this is a light fingering, and it occurred to me that I could hold this double alongside this and make a very low contrast Hesper cardigan. I made a first Hesper cardigan in December with very high contrast, and I do like the idea of doing a low contrast one. So I don't know. I know I will definitely be knitting this yarn into a cardigan. Whether that becomes a Bonnie or a Hesper, I think from a distance the Hesper would look like just a basic green sweater because of the low contrast. And the black is so neutral, I don't think it would change any of the other items in my wardrobe that I could wear it with. I don't know. What do you think? If you have any strong thoughts, I am open to them because I'm on the fence. We'll see. I definitely have to sleep on it. Do you ever cast something on when you're excited? I have to sleep on it because I can't trust the excitement initially. So we'll see, but that's what I'm thinking about this right now. It will become a cardigan, whatever it becomes. All right, next up is, oh, the ball bands on these are terrible. They're always coming unstuck. Next up is some yarn that is actually left over from this sweater. I didn't really put that together that I was going to talk about this, and I was wearing this today. But this is Rowan Valley Tweed, and it's a gorgeous fingering weight woolen spun yarn. There is a theme. I forgot to say this is woolen spun as well. I like a woolen spun yarn, if you can tell. So this is just gorgeous, and I way overbought for this sweater. Partially because I ended up making this more cropped. Oh, there's the bottom here. I ended up making this sweater more cropped than I had planned, but also this was on sale when I bought it, and I was conscious that it might be gone by the time I needed more, if I did need more, so I way overbought. Anyways, so I have 3 full hanks. They're 50-gram hanks, 3 full hanks, and a ball of, a hank that I had just started to finish off this sweater. In the time since I finished this sweater, there have been so many patterns that I've wanted to knit up with this Rowan Valley tweed in the color, I forgot to say that this is the color High Force. But they've often been things like mini shawls or things like that that would have used 1 or 2 hanks and left me with kind of a weird amount. So I've never let myself cast that on. But a couple of months ago, Orlensush released the Oka pattern. I hope I'm saying that correctly. It's O-C-A. It doesn't have a C-C-C, so I don't think it's Osa. Oka. And I think that would look gorgeous in this. This yarn is just, it's like subtly tweedy. I don't know if you can see, but it's got red specks in and some light blue specks. The light blue is often a little bit harder to see. Oh, this one is easier to see. So I've got all the yarns balled up so they've left fluff on each other. So I don't know if you can see there. There's some red specks and also some lighter blue specks, things like that. And the Oka pattern is one that I'm really excited to knit up because it's a shawl structure that I've never knit before. I've never knit that shape, and it's got some lace and other texture in there, so I think it'll be an interesting knit, an engaging knit, and it should use all of the rest of this yarn, which is just perfect because this is a shockingly warm yarn. I think I might have said that already for being fingering weight. I find this sweater really warm, and I'm really excited to have a really warm big shawl that I can wrap around. I also was really convinced by the final sample photo that Orlensush has on the pattern page. She's got the shawl kind of like tied in a knot around her neck. I'll put the photo up for sure. And it just looks so practical and easy to wear, and yeah, so I'm quite excited about that. That is definitely the plan for this one. Next up, let's talk about, I'm not doing any of this in any order, I've just kind of got it all piled beside me. It's a bit haphazard. So next up is some more yarn that I bought last year, and this is Jarbo Svensk Ull, Swedish wool, and this is their DK. And this again is a gorgeous, it's not heathered, but it must be, I wonder if it's dyed on light gray yarn rather than white yarn. I'll have to look into that, but you can, I don't know if you'll be able to see. It looks like it's coming out a bit more turquoise on the viewfinder than it is in real life. It's quite a subtle color. It's in real life it's a little bit less subtle on the screen, but you can kind of see that some of the raw yarn underneath is darker than the rest of the yarn, so it's got a kind of heathering to it. It's really beautiful. And this I bought intending to make the cocktail cardigan by Tricot Design MCL. She is a Canadian designer that I talked about. I'm not sure if I talked about this cardigan, but I talked about certainly her designs in general in the Canadian designers video that I put out last year. And I really admire her designs. Lots of them are a bit more feminine than I am aiming to go with my wardrobe right now, but they're gorgeous. I wish I was wearing, I wish I was tempted to wear more feminine clothing right now. But the cocktail cardigan is a really just good staple cardigan, and that was the firm plan for this for a while. A few months later, I did come across the Baseline cardigan by Suzanne Somers, and I'm very tempted by that one as well. So that is another sweater that is knit from side to side. I'm just realizing that I'm not sure if it's knit from the sleeves in or the back out. Oh no, I think it must be the sleeves in, because I'm pretty sure you finish up the back with a 3-needle bind off. And that looks like a really generous pattern where she's included 3 neck styles, so a tight crew neck, a looser crew neck, and a kind of V-neck cardigan. She's included all sorts of information on altering the length, but she's also knit up 3 different samples, giving examples of what you can do with color, and I find those really exciting. So she's got one that's vertical stripes, because of the way it's knit this way you can do vertical stripes, and she's got one that's a kind of solid color with accents on the pocket and things like that. That's a gorgeous tweedy pink in her sample. And then the one that I'm really in love with, she's got one that's color blocked. So each side of the cardigan is a quite different color. One's kind of closer to a neutral, and one is a rusty red, and then the button band and collar and hem are a 3rd color, which is closer to the neutral. And it's just gorgeous. I'm so excited about that. So I did spend a while thinking that maybe I would abandon my plans to knit the cocktail and knit the Baseline instead. But really what I like about the Baseline, or what I would want to do with a Baseline for myself, would be that color blocking, which means that I would end up using less than half of the yarn that I bought, because I would want to do the 3 separate sections, the one side, the other side, and then the button band and all the ribbing. And I'm not entirely sure what I would use for the other 2 colors. And B, that would leave me with quite a bit of this yarn. Now, there are lots of DK vest patterns that I would be very excited to knit. But I think what I'm leaning to right now is to go back to my original plan of knitting this into the cocktail, because I do love the idea of this yarn, this color in a cocktail sweater. It's not like I want to drink this color. I do not. But, so I think I'm going to go back to that and think of colors for a Baseline in the future. But I did want to talk to you about that, because there's always the chance that if I find a pattern I really like that would use up the rest of this, that maybe that's what I would still do. But we will see. I think I'm not going to cast this on right away. I've got a few other things that I want to knit first, but that's the current plan. I think the cocktail. Okay, so the next yarn that I want to talk to you about is Daughter of a Shepherd Ram Jam Sport. And this is more yarn that I bought from D-Stash, from someone's D-Stash, and I am so excited about this. I have been really interested in Daughter of a Shepherd yarn for quite a long time. I follow her newsletter, which is really delightful. I really appreciate the values of her business, and so Ram Jam Sport and Ram Jam Worsted, if you're not familiar, are woolen spun yarns that she has milled at various places in the UK using entirely undyed wool that would otherwise have been discarded. So kind of mill ends and things like that, just, wool that would be going to waste. So love the values of that, love the kind of business structure, love the yarn, love a natural colored yarn, and I had not yet purchased any Ram Jam Sport, partially because it's a bit on the pricier side for my budget, and I'd never really thought of the perfect project for it, and I just kind of kept hesitating and hadn't taken the plunge yet. But when I saw it in D-Stash, I thought, oh my gosh, okay, well now I really have to take the plunge, and I'll just find a pattern. So I bought 4 of these 50-gram hanks, and it's quite unusual for me to buy more than a single skein, a single skein of fingering weight yarn I'll buy once in a while without a plan, because you can make a shawl, or, that I can always find a use for. Otherwise, I tend to try not to buy yarn without at least a plan in mind, just to help guide how much I'll buy and that kind of stuff. But this I bought completely blind. I thought, I'll buy it and I'll figure out a plan afterwards. We could, it would work for a shawl. It's, a good amount for that kind of thing. Initially, one of the patterns that I found that could have worked is another Orlensuche pattern. You'll notice I'm talking about Orlensuche a lot this time. I think I'm talking to you about 3 of her patterns that I'm going to knit here, and I've got some yarn in Canada that I'm going to be making into a 4th. She does have a special, sorry, my voice is being a bit funny. She does have a kind of promotion with her patterns where if you buy 4 or more, you get 20% off. And I'm very susceptible to those kinds of deals. So I have been wanting to knit some of her patterns for years, but I would not let myself buy 4 patterns and take advantage of that deal until there were 4 patterns that I really, really knew I would knit. So I was strict with myself, because otherwise I knew that I would just get excited, because that kind of marketing works very well on me. But so initially, one of the things that I found that I could make with 4 skeins of this Ram Jam Sport is the Ezra vest by Orlensuche. And this she actually designed in Daughter of a Shepherd Ram Jam Sport. That's the yarn she used in the sample. So that was the first thing that I came across, and I thought, great, I've got, I could make a shawl or I could make a vest. I'm kind of, I'll figure out what I want to do. I've got enough. But I don't love the Ezra vest. I think it's I just don't see myself wearing it all the time. I don't love a V-neck in general. I don't love a deep V-neck, so I just wasn't overly excited about it. And then some months later, I saw the Perec vest by Orlensuche, so another Orlensuche pattern. And this is knit in a fingering weight yarn at 20 stitches per 10 centimeters or 4 inches. 10 centimeters or 4 inches, is that what I said? And that is too loose for me. I like to work things at a fairly tight gauge. In general, I like to work things at kind of close to the gauge suggested on the ball band, and so I dismissed that pattern initially. But then I saw, and I never know what the kind of ethics are of sharing another Raveler's photos on here. If I had myself together, I would have contacted this woman and asked her if I could share a photo. But in the projects on Ravelry, another knitter has made the Perec vest with 0 positive ease. In the samples, the Perec is quite oversized and loose. She knit the Perec in another sport weight yarn. I think it might even have been Yarndelic by John Arbin Textiles. She knit it with 0 positive ease, and she knit it at 24 stitches per 10 centimeters or 4 inches, which is a gauge that I would be very happy to knit this sport weight yarn up at. And it looked amazing on her. It maintained all of the... Orlensuche is quite known, I think, for having kind of small, thoughtful details, and it maintained all the small, thoughtful details, and the shaping around the shoulders looked really good, even though, all of the dimensions had shrunk down because of the gauge. And I was really convinced by that. This knitter was also very diligent, much more diligent than I am usually, if I'm honest, and had included exactly how much yardage it took her to make that vest. And I do have enough. So that is the plan with this. It will be a bit of an adventure, because it will be knitting 4 stitches per 10 centimeters off gauge. But I think that would be something I would wear a lot, and especially since I am knitting more cardigans, I'm also planning to knit more vests, because then I can wear the vests under the cardigans. Vests on their own are not something I wear very much, just because then I get cold arms. But vests and cardigans, I have 1 vest and 1 cardigan hand knit in my wardrobe right now, and I've been wearing them together all the time. Almost every day, if I'm honest. Every day that I'm getting up and getting dressed. So that's the plan, and I'm very, very excited about that. Oh, let's talk about this yarn. Okay, so next up is this yarn, which again has been in stash for several years. I talked about a different colorway of this yarn in my 2025 makes video because I made my husband a hat for joy by Jocelyn, a Canadian designer, out of his Harris tweed wool. We bought some for, I had him pick a color, and anyways, and this is the color I bought for myself. I bought this in 2021, so I've had it for quite a long time. It never came with a ball band or anything like that. I don't want to bore you if you just listened to me say this in the other video, but this I bought on the Isle of Harris on holiday in 2021, kind of just after, at the end of 2021, I should say, at the end, a couple of months after travel within the UK was permitted again, and there wasn't very much yarn in the Harris Tweed shop, but towards the back they had just a few kind of garbage bags full of yarn, and it would say kind of, I think it was just under 0.9 or 0.8 kilograms of yarn, and the price was based on how much weight was in each bag, and I was very excited, so we bought two. If I remember correctly, it was a really good price too. It was 40 pounds or something like that for each bag. So I daydream about going back there. But it's this gorgeous yarn, and I feel like the camera did a better job in that previous video of picking up the colors than it had previously, so maybe it will be doing a decent job here as well. But this is one of those yarns that I find really difficult to photograph. It tends to look just black, or if I blow the colors out then you can see, but it really is a quite deep green with the classic Harris Tweed melange of colors. So in addition to the kind of dark green, almost black base, it's got blues and yellows, or maybe the yellows are light greens, and red in there. It's just beautiful. And I had daydreams initially of knitting my husband and I both like an Iran sweater with the full cabling all over the body, and I did start to knit him one of those, and that was kind of the first sign that things were changing with my body, I guess, because my hands just couldn't deal with all that cabling. So I ended up putting his aside, and he still doesn't have a sweater out of that yarn. But he doesn't really want sweaters with sleeves anyway, so I'm gonna knit him a vest. But anyways, for myself, I ended up knitting the Monday sweater by Petite Knit, and I was a bit sad that it didn't have cables on it, but I thought, and I'm glad that I did this, I thought knitting it up into something that I can wear is better than being sad that I can't knit all over cables because of my hands. And this yarn has worn like iron. I wear that sweater all the time. I've had it for 3 or 4 years, and it looks like the day I first blocked it and, you know, cast it off and blocked it. It wears like iron, and it's just gorgeous. But now, sorry, that's a lot of backstory about this yarn, but now I'm going to knit some cables. Not a lot of cables, but what I think I'm going to knit this up into is the Winterberry by Emily Foden. So this is another Canadian design. I definitely talked about Emily Foden in that Canadian designers video. I just think her designs are gorgeous. This is from the book, the Winterberry vest is in the book Knits About Winter. It is unfortunately sold out in hard copy, but there is a digital copy available, and it calls for DK weight yarn. I would call this a thick DK, I think, based on the things that I've knit with this, so I think this will work beautifully, and I'm really, really excited. I think that the Winterberry will work really well and kind of, you know, and fulfill the dream I initially had for this yarn, because it is more or less all over texture. It's got kind of what looks like a moss stitch on the sides. It's got braid cables down around the central panel, and then it's got baubles on the central panel. And I think it's really lovely. I think the different kinds of texture I think will be fine for the, you know, the moss texture will be no problem for my hands. Knits and pearls, that's fine. The cables are quite small, and there's good knitting in between them. Bobbles might be a little bit hard on my hands, but I'm just planning to take it slow. Obviously there won't be bobbles on every row either, so that will give me some breaks. So I'm hoping that that will be a way to reclaim my vision of knitting this into a texture, into something with cables. Now, I'm just double checking. But yes, one thing to say about this vest, and indeed about all of the patterns in Knits About Winter, I believe. I should double check that before I say that, but certainly about the Winterberry vest, is that it is not fully size inclusive to the measurements that we deem standard for size inclusivity now. This was first published in 2018 when I think we were not doing as good a job at listening to the people who've made, such a difference in the knitting community to making us pay attention to how important size inclusivity is. I think that in 2018 we were still letting book publishers get away with telling us that it takes up too much space to be size inclusive, which is very silly, I think, because so what if it's more space? You gotta do it. So it is not fully size inclusive. I want to be transparent that I know that. I am planning to knit this anyways. I do want to offer, I have not made good headway in grading up the sweater that I knit for myself, designed myself a couple of years ago, but I made no headway. I have not even looked at the grading in ages and ages and ages. With the brain fog, it's just not something that I'm even aiming to do in the near future. But ever since then, I am very interested in grading, and I'm really interested in kind of questions of how you can make things more size inclusive, and how you can make things more size inclusive so that they look the same or give this a similar effect across all the sizes, because I think that's often lost, and sometimes it's a question of weighing up, holding onto the same look across all the sizes with having the fit be slightly different. Anyways, I'm really interested, and I do kind of read any information that I come across or can find, because I feel very unqualified. I am unqualified to do that kind of thing, and so I don't know, we'll see if I ever do, but I like to learn things. So now that it's something I'm aware of, I like to learn about it. All of that to say, I'm slow to answer emails. My health and my migraines means that I disappear for days at a time. If things are really bad, sometimes, a week at a time. But if you are watching and you are thinking you would really like to knit the Winterberry cardigan, and the Winterberry cardigan does not come in a size that would work for you, it goes up to, it says finished bust circumference, the biggest size is 130 centimeters or 51 1/4 inches, and it says to be worn with approximately 2.5 to 7.5 centimeters or 1 to 3 inches of positive ease. So if you are looking at this and you think you would like to knit the Winterberry cardigan and that upper size limit does not work for you, I'm not a professional, I don't really know what I'm doing, but if working through how to make some of those adjustments yourself with somebody would help, if that's something you are interested in, I am more than happy to try to muddle through that with you. The math doesn't scare me. I have not done this construction of vest before, so that will be new for me, but I am more than happy to help with that kind of thing. And that, I'm to my knowledge, never knitting not size inclusive patterns otherwise, but in general, I'm always happy to try to muddle through that kind of stuff. We'll see. Oh, maybe, yeah. Anyways, I do want to emphasize I'm slow. So if you want to do it right away, that probably won't work. I'm very slow, and my health makes me slower, but yeah. To my knowledge, Emily Foden is not involved in the knitting world at all anymore. She, is not publishing patterns, and she had her own yarn line for a while and is no longer producing yarn and has moved into a different industry, which is unfortunate because I think otherwise she, she might have gone back and made her designs more size inclusive, but that seems unlikely given that she's not involved in the industry at all anymore. So anyways, but I think that this will be very, very wearable for me. And I'm picturing it over dresses in the summer as well as under cardigans. The summer Summer here is short. I'm from one of those places that's cold, 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 you know, minus 20 degrees centigrade in the winter, and then, you know, plus 35 degrees for several weeks in the summer. I'm used to the extremes, and this is a much more temperate climate in the northeast of England, and the summers are not hot. So I think a vest over dresses for the short period that I would be wearing summer dresses would be very welcome. So that's the plan with that. Should we talk about some more sport weight? We're getting through this. I don't have a good sense of how long I've been talking, but we are getting through this. So the next yarn that I want to talk to you about is Briggs & Little Sport, which I have used a number of times now. I have shown you some of it. I have not shown you all of the knitting that I've done with that, but the Polina pullover that I knit last year, I knit out of Briggs & Little Sport in the colors fern green and dark green, and I just love it. I think that Briggs & Little Sport and Briggs & Little Heritage together are my favorite all-time yarns. They're workhorse yarns. They're very rustic. To give you a tangent example, Tashi from Stitches in Starlight is currently knitting up a jacket in... Is it a jacket? A jacket in Briggs & Little Heritage, which is a kind of thick worsted Iran weight yarn, and they mentioned that it is too rustic for them to knit it into anything other than a jacket, that they would not wear it as a sweater. So, you know, be forewarned, it is very rustic, but it's woolen spun, it comes in great colors, it's Canadian, which, you know, I like. It's Canadian from the oldest woolen mill in Canada, in New Brunswick, I believe, and I was going to say something. It's woolen spun. Did I say that it's woolen spun already? So it's just gorgeous. Oh, no, what I was going to say is, and it's quite affordable. Obviously, affordability is relative, but I think they increased their prices, and now it's $7.50 Canadian per hank. So it's really quite affordable, and it's just my favorite go-to all the time yarn now for sure. So this I have a sweaters quantity in, and I am torn between two patterns, as in a few other cases. I am torn between knitting this up into a second Polina pullover. The question that lingers there is what I would do as my contrast colors. I do have one ball wound up of undyed natural white Briggs & Little Sport that I could do for the flowers, but I wouldn't want to do that as the flowers and the petals. I think I would want to do something else for the stems and leaves. Maybe a gray, maybe a blue, a light blue, I'm not sure. So that's one hurdle, is I would need to figure out what I could use for, I don't think I have anything in stash that would be appropriate, so I would need to buy something else. But that's very tempting. I think that would look gorgeous in this color. I'm also interested in using this to knit up something with texture, and I was thinking that I might knit the Wool and Honey sweater by Andrea Mowry. I've never knit an Andrea Mowry pattern, and the Wool and Honey is a pattern must have come out several years ago now, and I have kind of had that in my favorites ever since it came out. I've had it in my queue probably ever since it came out, and I just love it. I'm not sure why I've never gotten around to knitting it, but I think this would be gorgeous in that. I know that some people are hesitant to knit darker colors into texture because it doesn't show it off quite as well, but I quite like the idea of texture in a darker, like I like the idea of that subtlety. I don't know. I haven't really shown you, but this color is called Mulberry, and it's a kind of reddy purple, I would say, with blue wound in. So just gorgeous. And the Polina, obviously I've knit in this yarn before. I know that I would be able to make that gauge, no problem. The same gauge, I knitted at 24 stitches per 10 centimeters or 4 inches. So I knit it off gauge, but I know that that will work. The Wool and Honey calls for fingering weight yarn, where this is a sport, but it calls for a woolen spun So that's consistent at least. So I would need to play with the gauge a little bit in the wool and honey. I'm not scared of that. I think that would be fine. So we'll see. If you have knit the wool and honey and either really enjoyed the experience or really didn't enjoy the experience, I would be very eager to know. I'm very on the fence. This is another one that I will probably be leaving until I've knit some other things, just to give myself some more time to think about it. But I think the problem is I'm really excited about both in this case, so who knows? We'll see. We're getting there. This is the penultimate set of skeins or set of balls that I want to talk to you about. I am not planning on knitting these together. I have 2 sweaters quantities of this. So this is de lana rustica, which is a 100% Spanish merino wool, woolen spun as a 1-ply, and it is a ran weight. Yes, I believe it's an Iran weight. And I have it in the colors, what are the colors called now? The orange is Orange Juice V2, and the purple is Aubergine. Now, when I bought this online, I have to admit that the aubergine looked more red leaning and not quite as purple, and I kind of wish that it was a bit more red leaning, but I knew that it was called aubergine when I bought it, so I knew that there was a possibility that it would arrive looking very purple. But the purple is still a color that I quite like. I was gonna say it's grown on me, but it didn't really, like, I knew that it might arrive quite purple, and it arrived and it's quite purple, and I still like it. So this one's for me, and you might have heard me at some point recently. I feel like I talked about how I would like to knit my mom things. And my mom has always been very, very generous with me. She's a sewist primarily. She finds knitting too slow. And she's sewn me all sorts of clothes. She sews me bags all the time, things like that. So I'm always kind of trying to knit things for mom. And in general, she says, no, I own enough clothes. I don't need anything. But I have learned recently that the answer to this is not to say, can I knit you a cardigan? Or can I knit you a shawl? The answer is to show her a yarn and say, would you like a cardigan out of this? And because then she can visualize it, the answer is always yes. So, which is terrible. I should be, convincing my mother to let her, but when I knit her things, she really wears them and she really likes them. And it makes me feel really good to be able to do something for her and to see her wearing them. My partner doesn't need a lot of hand knits, and my brother and father are way too hard on things and know that they're way too hard on things, so won't let me knit them anything because they know it wouldn't last. So this one's for mom. And I bought this yarn, again on sale, and it is a merino wool, which I said already. Merino wool is not something that I usually gravitate towards. There are a number of reasons for that. One is merino wool don't thrive in the UK, and I try to buy more local fibers in general. Another is that softness is not something I prioritize very highly in the wool that I use for my knits, for garments in particular, partially because I'm just not having it next to skin, and I prefer yarns to be a bit rustic. I like to knit garments that will really hold up and last and not pill and that kind of thing. I know that not all merino, and depending on the way it's spun, not all merino pills, but these are kind of a general cluster of reasons that I don't look for merino specifically usually. But I found this yarn on sale and I was really intrigued by the description. So I just want to read you a little bit. You may well know about this already, but this is the family-run business of Esther and Javier. Their commitment to a sustainable and respectful lifestyle led them to become wool makers, selecting fleeces from transhumance flocks of sheep that are, and I did not know this word. This was I love a new word, transhumance flocks, which means sheep that are grazed in higher pastures in the summer and lower valleys during the winter. The wool is then processed and spun locally in a way that retains the integrity of the fiber before it's dyed in a riot of joyous colors. And these are definitely joyous colors. So I was really excited about this. Spain is obviously not local to me, but it's less far away than it was when I lived in North America, and I thought I would treat myself with with this yarn. And I already knew what I would knit this up into for myself, and I showed my mom a number of patterns, and she picked the same pattern. So I'm going to knit 2 of the same cardigan, but I'm going to knit mine first because Mom is not sure what size she wants hers to be. She doesn't spend as much time thinking about positive ease or negative, ease and that kind of sizing as knitters do, obviously. So she asked if I would knit mine first, and then she can try it on and decide if she wants it bigger or smaller than mine, which I think works really well, actually. So this I am going to knit into for me and for Mum, as long as she likes it once I'm done, the Basil cardigan by Amy Christoffers of Savory Knitting. And this is, again, a quite basic cardigan, so I'll hopefully have a few of those at the end of this year or several years, or however long this period of knitting is for me. This one though has a collar, a short collar, and the button band is knit at the same time as the rest of the cardigan. That is actually true of the cocktail cardigan as well, which I forgot to say. I have never done that before. I've never knit a button band at the same time as the rest of the cardigan, so that's interesting. There are 2 different examples of it here, and the button bands look quite different, so it'll be kind of 2 different ways of doing that, which I'm excited about. And this cardigan I just love. Something about the shawl and the ribbing details. I think there's kind of... I find a pattern so I can describe this better for you, but no, maybe it's just a plain 2x2 rib. I don't know. Something about this just is gorgeous to me. I think partially it's definitely the color that she has knit the sample into. It's a kind of gorgeous Kelly green, I would call that green, and I would definitely like to knit this in a Kelly green at some point, but I don't have Kelly green, so I'm going to focus on what I have, and I think that's going to look really gorgeous in this purple. It'll be thick and warm and cozy, and I'm just really, really excited about that. So this I might actually cast on a little bit earlier than some of these other projects, just because it would be nice if I could have this done by the time Mum and Dad next come to visit, because then she could try this on and I could get to work on hers after that. So I might be bumping this up, even though season-wise, that means I would be finishing this very, very thick cardigan just as the weather is getting warmer, probably, but that's all right. I'm a coldie, to be honest, especially, I'm never moving around anymore. I'm always sitting still, so I probably will get used out of that. You don't need to know that. I don't know why I'm babbling about this, but thinking aloud. But so 2 cardigans out of that, and I do kind of like the colors together, but Mom and I will just have to take a picture of the 2 sweaters together, I think, once we're done. All right, I think this is the final yarn. I'm pretty sure. I should say, have I said, this is not all of my stash. If I knit through all of this, I will have knit through the bulk of my stash, but I still have, odds and ends left over from other projects. I do have, this is not all of my stash. I do have some fingering weight yarn that I'm not sure what I want to do with, stuff like that. So it's not everything, but this is the last yarn that I want to talk to you about today. And this is Eco Shetland Worsted again by Estelle. I'm realizing as I hold this up that I forgot to tell you that the green color was called Pine. The details coming a bit out of order, but they're coming, which is the important part. And this color is called Birch. And I bought this intending to knit another pattern by Orlensush, the Cameo Vest, which is an all-over textured vest that buttons down the front. And it's just gorgeous. I love Ravelry. What a valuable resource Ravelry is. I found 3 other knitters who had used this yarn, the Estelle Eco Worsted Shetland, to knit the Cameo Vest. 2 of them had in fact used this color, had used the birch. The 3rd used a gorgeous light green, I think. So I was really excited to find this yarn and that pattern and to be able to see other people knitting it up exactly the way that I was intending to knit it up. Ravelry is such a good resource. I think it's generous of everyone to share so many details of their projects so that we can see. And this is another case where just my excitement about that yarn and pattern combination has shifted, and I'm just not as excited about it anymore. Partially it might be that, you know, this is another color that definitely washes me out, though again, I don't really care about that. I just don't think anyone who's looking at me really cares. But I don't know, something about, maybe it's that design feels quite feminine in a way that I'm not excited about right now. I'm not quite sure what it is, but I'm just not excited about that anymore. And I haven't bought that pattern, so no harm, no foul. And I am going to do something else with this. I do not have a full sweaters quantity. I only have enough to do a vest or something like that. But I don't have any color work planned with the yarn that I already have. I'm going to talk about color work in a minute when I talk about the other designs that I'd like to buy yarn for. But in case I want to do color work before I buy any more yarn, I'm thinking I might work this up into some color work, especially because so many of the other yarns that I've talked about today are a similar gauge to this, or it could be held double to be a similar gauge to this. So this is a yarn that, again, I think I'm going to hold until a bit later in the knitting of all of these things, because then I can use scraps and leftovers in the color work. And the pattern that I'm thinking of using is the Azucena or the Azucena. I'm not sure how to pronounce that, I apologize, by Nadia Chrétien-Lechen. And this is a really generous pattern that comes, there's a cardigan version and a sweater version, both with full sleeves, that are included in the same PDF. I think I will make a short-sleeved version. I have not yet decided whether I will steek it or not, but I think I will make a short-sleeve version, and then I can really play with color. It's got a great yoke, which calls for, I think, 3 contrast colors, but I think that I could do more depending on how many scraps I have and which colors I want to use together and how much of each scrap I have and that kind of thing. So I'm not planning on, I won't be casting this on for a while, but I love the idea of that, and I think it would still fulfill the same function as the cameo vest in that I could wear it over summer dresses, wear it with jeans, that kind of thing. I think with short sleeves I could wear it under cardigans as well, so I think it would fit in really well, and it would give me a good bit of color work to reach for, which is something that I think I will really miss if I don't if I don't have any planned. So that is the last yarn that I wanted to talk to you about today, and I do think I have been filming for quite a while, so I think this video is getting a bit long. I probably need a bit of a break, so I hope it's okay, but I think I will save, I might film it today anyways after a cup of tea, but I will save the patterns that are a bit more challenging, that I want to cast on at some point in the next little while, but that I don't have yarn for yet, for another video. I don't think it will make sense as its own video. That would be a very small video, I suspect, but maybe I'll tack it on at the end of something else. So that will be the plan, I hope that's okay. But thank you so much for being with me. I hope that some of this was interesting. I really enjoy talking this kind of thing through and hearing other people talk about their reasoning for things. So hopefully this was fun for you as well. And I'm on a bit of a roll with videos right now. I have just enough afternoons where I'm able to sit up and talk without wearing myself out. So I think I will have more videos coming before too long. I don't want to jinx myself by saying that out loud. I'm sure that there will be more periods where I disappear again, but for right now I have a few videos lined up for you, so I will be seeing you soon, and I hope that you're well.